The trading station Nexus 7 was always busy. Ships came and went every hour. Thousands of aliens walked through its wide corridors, buying and selling goods from across the galaxy. It was the largest trade hub in this sector of space, and Captain Yuna had visited it many times before. Her cargo ship, the Dawn Runner, docked at Platform 12. The clamps locked onto the hull with a familiar sound. Yuna stood up from her pilot seat and stretched her arms. It had been a long journey from Earth Colony 7, and she was ready to walk on solid ground again. "Docking complete," said Taiho, her first officer. He was a tall man with short black hair and calm eyes. Before joining her crew, he had served in the Earth Defense Force for 15 years. "Cargo manifest is ready for inspection." Yuna nodded. "Good. Let's get this done quickly. I want to refuel and leave before the night cycle." They walked together to the main airlock. Behind them, 2 other crew members followed. Ji-hoon was the youngest, only 23 years old. He had joined the crew 6 months ago and still looked at everything with wonder in his eyes. The 4th member was their engineer, a quiet woman named Minji, who rarely spoke unless something was broken. The airlock opened with a hiss of air. Yuna stepped onto the platform and looked around. The station was exactly as she remembered. Bright lights hung from the high ceiling. Shops lined both sides of the main corridor. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved through the crowd, but something was different today. A group of Cathany merchants stood near a food stall. They were tall beings with hard shells like insects and many arms. When they saw Yuna and her crew, they stopped talking. One of them bowed his head. The others quickly moved aside, creating a path. Yuna frowned but kept walking. Maybe they were just being polite. Then it happened again. A family of Tehran, reptilian creatures with green scales and yellow eyes, was walking toward them. The father saw the humans and immediately pulled his children to the side. He pressed them against the wall and lowered his head until Yuna passed. "Did you see that?" Ji-hoon whispered. "I saw it," Taiho replied. His voice was tense. His soldier instincts were waking up. They continued walking. Every few steps, more aliens moved out of their way. Some hurried into shops to avoid them. Others pressed their backs against walls. A few actually bowed. Yuna had been a trader for 12 years. She had visited hundreds of stations and met thousands of aliens. She had never seen anything like this. "What is happening?" Minji asked quietly. Before Yuna could answer, a young Cathany rushed around a corner. He was looking at a device in his hands and not watching where he was going. He crashed directly into Taiho, bouncing off the larger human and falling to the ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the young Cathany looked up and saw what he had done. His many eyes went wide with terror. He scrambled to his knees and pressed his face to the floor. "Forgive me," he cried. His voice was high with fear. "I did not see you. Please, I meant no harm. I beg mercy." Taiho stood frozen in shock. "What? I'm fine. It was an accident." "Get up." The Cathany did not get up. He stayed on the floor, trembling. Tears leaked from his many eyes. "Please," he begged. "I have a family. My children are young. Please show mercy." Yuna knelt down and spoke gently. "No one is angry with you. It was just a small bump. Please stand." Slowly, the young Cathany raised his head. He looked at Yuna with complete confusion. You are not going to report me." "Report you for what? Walking into someone by accident?" The Cathany stood on shaking legs. He kept glancing at the humans like he expected them to attack at any moment. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for your mercy." Then he ran away as fast as his legs could carry him. Yuna looked at her crew. They all wore the same confused expression. "Captain," Taiho said slowly, "something is very wrong here." A new voice spoke from behind them. "Perhaps I can explain." They turned to see an older Kethany approaching. He wore expensive robes covered with symbols of office. Two guards walked behind him, but they kept their weapons pointed at the ground. The old Kethany moved carefully, like he was approaching a dangerous animal. "I am Ambassador Real of the Kethany Dominion," he said. He bowed deeply. "Captain, I wonder if you might spare a few moments for a private conversation." Una studied him carefully. "Why is everyone afraid of us?" Real's face shifted in what might have been surprise. "You truly do not know?" "Know what?" The ambassador looked around at the watching crowd. Many aliens had stopped to stare at the humans. In their eyes, Una saw the same emotion she had seen in the young Kethany. Fear. Pure, deep fear. "Please," Real said. "Come with me. What I have to say should not be spoken in public." Una considered refusing, but her curiosity was stronger than her caution. She nodded and followed the ambassador. Real led them to a private meeting room on the upper level of the station. The room had comfortable chairs and a large window that looked out at the stars. Once they were all inside, Real sealed the door and activated a privacy shield. "Please," he said. His guards remained standing near the walls. The humans sat. Una noticed that the guards were sweating. Their hands trembled near their weapons. They were scared to be in the same room as four humans. "Ambassador," Una said firmly. "Explain." Real took a deep breath. "Captain Una, how much do you know about humanity's history in the galaxy?" "We made first contact about 200 years ago," Una said. "We joined the Galactic Trade Network. We have a few dozen colonies. We're a small species compared to the major empires. Nothing special." Real shook his head slowly. "That is what your government teaches you. But it is not the whole truth. Then what is the truth?" The ambassador's voice dropped to nearly a whisper. "Every major empire in this galaxy has one law that is never written down. One rule that is never spoken aloud but is always obeyed. It is the most important law in the known universe." "What law?" Real met her eyes. In his gaze, Una saw ancient fear, the kind that passed from parent to child across generations. "Never harm a human," he said. "Never insult Earth. Never provoke humanity in any way. The penalty for breaking this law is not death. It is extinction." Silence filled the room. Ji-hoon laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. But no one else was laughing. "That's ridiculous," Taiho said. "Humans don't have that kind of power. We have a small defense fleet. A few million soldiers. We're nothing compared to the great empires." "You are correct about your military," Real said. "And yet every empire fears you. Every species teaches their children to never anger a human." "Do you know why?" Una shook her head. The ambassador's voice trembled as he spoke. "Because the galaxy remembers what your kind did when you were wronged. The Morith Collective learned. The Trading Syndicate learned. The Void Kings learned. All of them are gone now, erased. Not through war, but through something far worse. Something only humans are capable of." He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Una. "You do not know your own history, Captain. But every other species in this galaxy does. We teach it to our children as the most important lesson they will ever learn. We tell them stories about humans to frighten them into obedience. Because the truth about your species is more terrifying than any monster we can imagine." Una felt cold despite the warm room. "What did we do?" Real closed his many eyes. When he opened them again, they were filled with something that looked like respect mixed with horror. "You survived. And then you made certain that those who hurt you would never hurt anyone again. Not their children. Not their grandchildren. Not anyone carrying their blood for 1,000 generations. You did not destroy your enemies, Captain. You made them destroy themselves." He stood and walked to the window, staring out at the stars. "Would you like to know the truth about the Morith Collective? About what happened when they made the mistake of attacking a human colony?" Yuna stood. Her voice was steady despite the fear growing in her chest. "Tell me everything." The year was 2651 by Earth's calendar. The colony of New Bazan sat on a rocky planet called Kepler 442b. It was not a beautiful world. The sky was always gray. The wind was always cold. But 12,000 humans called it home. They had come to mine rare metals from the deep caves. The work was hard and the pay was small, but the colonists were happy. They had built schools for their children. They had planted gardens in heated domes. They had created a life far from Earth, and they were proud of what they had made. Sergeant Do-hyun stood on the wall of the colony's main building, watching the sunrise. At 45 years old, he was the leader of the colony's small defense force. He had 50 soldiers under his command and enough weapons to fight off pirates or wild animals. It was a quiet job. Nothing dangerous ever happened on Kepler-442b. His radio crackled. "Sergeant, we have incoming ships on the sensors." Do-hyun raised his binoculars and looked at the sky. 3 dark shapes were dropping through the clouds. They were too big to be trading vessels, too fast to be cargo ships. "Get me an identification," he ordered. The radio was silent for a long moment. Then his soldier's voice came back, shaking with fear. "Sir, the computer says they're Morith warships." Do-hyun's blood turned cold. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Morith Collective. They were a race of crystalline beings, creatures made of living crystal who believed organic life was inferior. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They had enslaved millions of beings. And they had never shown mercy to anyone. "Sound the alarm," Do-hyun said. "Get everyone to the shelters, now." Sirens began to wail across the colony. Miners dropped their tools and ran. Mothers grabbed their children. Teachers led students through the streets in long lines. Everyone knew the drill. They had practiced it many times, but they had never thought they would need it. Gyeon was in the food processing center when the alarm sounded. She was an engineer, responsible for keeping the colony's machines working. She had 2 children, a daughter named Somi who was 12, and a son named Hanyul who was 15. She ran through the streets searching for them. The shelters were underground, built into the rock beneath the colony. They could hold everyone for months if needed. But Jeon would not go down until she found her children. "Mom!" a voice called. She turned and saw Hanyul running toward her. He was tall for his age, with his father's serious face. Behind him came Somi, her small legs pumping hard to keep up. Jeon grabbed them both in her arms. "Where's your father?" "He went to the wall," Hanyul said. "With Sergeant Do-hyun." Jeon looked toward the outer wall. She could see soldiers running along it, carrying weapons that suddenly seemed very small. Above them, the 3 Morith ships descended like dark clouds. "Come on," she said. "We need to get underground." They ran with the crowd toward the shelter entrance. But before they reached it, a bright light filled the sky. Jeon looked up and saw something falling from the Morith ships. Something glowing with terrible energy. "Down!" She screamed, pushing her children to the ground. The first bomb hit the eastern part of the colony. The explosion was so loud that Jeon thought her ears would burst. A wave of heat washed over them. When she looked up, a quarter of the colony was gone. Where homes and shops had stood, there was now only fire and broken stone. More bombs fell. Jeon grabbed her children and ran. Around her, people were screaming. Some were on fire. Some were already dead. The Morith were not trying to conquer the colony. They were trying to destroy it completely. She reached the shelter entrance just as another bomb landed nearby. The blast threw her forward. She hit the ground hard and tasted blood. When she tried to stand, her leg would not work. Looking down, she saw bones sticking through her skin. "Mom!" Somi was crying. Haniel was trying to pull her toward the shelter. "Go," Jian said. "Take your sister and go. I won't leave you." Haniel. She grabbed his arm and stared into his eyes. "You have to protect Somi. You have to survive. Promise me." Tears ran down the boy's face. But he nodded. "I promise." Jian watched her children disappear into the shelter. Then she crawled toward the wall, where she could see Dohyun and his soldiers still fighting. They had no chance. The Marath ships hung in the sky like gods of destruction, raining fire on everything below. But the soldiers kept shooting anyway. They kept fighting because that was all they could do. Dohyun saw Jian crawling toward him. "Get to the shelter," he shouted. "My leg is broken. I can't make it." She pulled herself up against the wall and looked at him. "How bad is it?" Dohyun's face told her everything. "They're killing everyone. We've sent distress signals, but help is days away. Maybe weeks." Another explosion shook the ground. More screams filled the air. "Then we fight until we die," Jian said. She picked up a weapon from a fallen soldier and aimed it at the sky. "At least we die fighting." The bombardment lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the colony of New Bizin was nothing but smoke and ruins. Bodies lay everywhere. The schools were gone. The gardens were ash. 12,000 humans had lived there that morning. By sunset, most of them were dead. Underground, 47 survivors huddled in the darkness. The shelter's power was failing. The air was getting thin. Haniel held his sister close and listened to the sounds of destruction above. A communication device crackled to life. It was connected to the colony's emergency transmitter, one of the last systems still working. "This is the Morath Collective," a cold voice said. "Your colony has been destroyed as a demonstration of our power. Let the galaxy know that organic life is weak. Humans are nothing. You exist only because we allow it. Remember this lesson." Haniel's hand shook with rage. His mother was dead. His father was dead. Everyone he knew was dead. And the Morath were laughing about it. He crawled to the communication device. With trembling fingers, he activated the emergency broadcast system. It would send a message directly to Earth, to the heart of human civilization. "My name is Haniel," he said. His voice was hoarse from crying. "I am 15 years old. I am from the colony of New Bizin. The Morath attacked us. They killed everyone. My mother, my father, everyone." He paused to wipe tears from his eyes. "There are 47 of us left. I don't know if we'll survive. The air is running out. But I need Earth to hear this. I need everyone to hear this." His voice grew stronger, harder. "The Morath did this. They laughed while they killed us. They called us weak. They called us nothing. Don't let them get away with this. Don't let them kill more of us. Remember what they did here. Remember their name." He ended the transmission and sat back against the wall. Somi was sleeping in his arms, exhausted from crying. Around them, the other survivors sat in silence. No one knew if help would come in time. On Earth, the message arrived 6 hours later. It was played on every news channel, every radio station, every public screen in every city on the planet. Billions of humans heard Haniel's words. They heard the fear in his voice. They heard the pain. And they heard his final request. Remember what they did. For 3 days, humanity was silent. The galactic community watched and waited. News channels on 100 worlds discussed the attack. Most expected humans to protest, to demand justice through diplomatic channels, to send angry messages that would be ignored that the Morath Collective celebrated. Their leader, Morith Prime, gave speeches about organic weakness. He said the attack proved that humans were inferior. He said no one would dare challenge the collective's power. On the fourth day, something strange happened. Every human ship in the galaxy stopped what it was doing. Cargo vessels changed course. Mining ships left their asteroids. Research stations packed up their equipment. Even private yachts and family transports began to move. They all headed in the same direction, toward Morith Space Dock. By the fifth day, 4,000 human ships had gathered at the border of Morith territory. They were not warships. They had no heavy weapons. Most of them were simple trading vessels and passenger transports. The Morith laughed. What could cargo ships do against the greatest military power in the sector? But the humans did not attack. They did not demand negotiations. They did not send any messages at all. They simply waited. And in the silence of space, the Morith collective began to feel something they had never felt before. Fear. Admiral Sujin stood on the bridge of her flagship, a converted cargo hauler named Remembrance. Through the wide windows, she could see the blue-green world of Morith Prime spinning slowly in space. It was a beautiful planet, covered with crystal forests and shining cities. 5 billion Morith lived there. She felt nothing when she looked at it. No anger, no hatred. Just cold, perfect calm. Admiral, her communications officer, said, "We've received another message from Morith Prime. He's demanding to know our intentions. Ignore it." "Yes, Admiral." Around her ship, 4,000 human vessels held their positions. They had been here for 2 weeks now. No one had fired a shot. No one had spoken a word to the Morith. They simply waited, forming a ring around every Morith world, like a noose waiting to tighten. The galaxy watched with confusion. This was not how wars were fought. Where were the battles? Where were the demands? What were the humans doing? Dr. Yunji knew exactly what they were doing. She sat in her laboratory, deep inside the Remembrance, surrounded by machines and computers. She was a xenobiologist, an expert on alien life forms. For the past 5 years, she had studied the Morith in secret. She knew their weakness. The Morith were crystalline beings. They did not give birth like organic creatures. Instead, they reproduced through a process called resonance. Adult Morith would gather together and sing a specific frequency. This song would cause new crystals to grow from the ground, slowly forming into children over many months. It was a beautiful process. And it had one fatal flaw. The resonance frequency was very precise. If anything disrupted it, the crystals would not form correctly. The children would be born broken, unable to survive. Unji had designed something to create that disruption. Tiny machines, smaller than dust, that would float in the air and interfere with the Morith song. They would not kill anyone. They were not weapons in the traditional sense. They were something far worse. "The nanomachines are ready for deployment," Unji reported to Admiral Sujin. "Once released, they will spread through the atmosphere within 48 hours. They will remain active for approximately 50 years. What will be the effect? Complete reproductive failure. No new Morith will be born. Their population will age and die naturally without replacement. Within 3 generations, they will be functionally extinct." Sujin nodded slowly. "Can it be reversed?" "Only if we provide the counter frequency, which we will do if they meet our terms." The Admiral stood and walked to the window. Behind her, a pilot named Jaewoo watched silently. He had lost his brother at New Bizen. His hands ached to fire weapons, to destroy the Morith ships that patrolled nervously around their homeworld. But he understood the plan. This was not revenge. Revenge was quick and hot. This was justice. Justice was slow and cold. "Begin deployment," Sujin ordered. Across 4,000 ships, small containers opened. Invisible clouds of nanomachines drifted toward the Morth worlds. They passed through defense shields, too small to be detected. They mixed with the air, settling onto every surface, entering every building. No one on the Morth worlds noticed anything unusual. 2 months passed. The human ships remained in position. The Morth continued to demand answers. Other galactic powers sent messages asking what was happening. No one responded. Then the first reports came. In the crystal gardens of Morth Prime, where new children had been sung into existence for 10,000 years, the resonance failed. Adults gathered and sang their ancient songs, but no crystals grew. They tried again and again. Nothing happened. Morth Prime called his scientists. They studied the problem, but could find no cause. The resonance frequencies were correct. The adults were healthy. Everything should have worked, but no children were born. After 6 months, panic began to spread. Every Morth world reported the same problem. Not a single new child had been born since the humans arrived. Scientists searched desperately for an explanation. Religious leaders prayed to ancient gods. Nothing helped. Finally, Admiral Sujin sent a message. To the Morth Collective, we have done nothing to your people. We have fired no weapons. We have killed no one. But we have ensured that no new Morth will ever be born unless we choose to allow it. Your species is dying. Not today. Not tomorrow. But soon enough. She paused, letting her words sink in. You have 1 year to accept our terms. If you refuse, we will leave this space and never return. Your children will never sing. Your kind will fade from the universe. This is not a threat. This is simply what will happen. The message ended. Morth Prime refused to believe it. He sent his best warriors to attack the human ships. But the humans simply moved away, avoiding battle. They had no need to fight. Time was their weapon. The Morth called for help from other empires. But no one came. The great powers watched in silence, fascinated and terrified by what they were witnessing. This was not war. This was extinction delivered patiently, without a single drop of blood. A year passed. The oldest Morth began to die of natural age. Normally, this would not matter. New generations would replace the old. But there were no new generations. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Morth population began to shrink. Morth Prime finally called for negotiations. Admiral Sujin met him on a neutral station. The crystalline leader towered over her, his body glittering with ancient power. But his eyes showed fear. What do you want? He demanded. Sujin placed a small device on the table. It projected images of New Bizin, the ruined buildings, the burned gardens, the bodies of 12,000 humans. First, you will publicly admit what you did. You will broadcast to every world in the galaxy that you attacked an innocent colony without cause. You will apologize, and then you will build monuments to the dead on every Morth world. The names of all 12,000 victims will be carved in crystal that will last forever. Your children, if you are ever allowed to have any again, will learn about New Bizin in their schools. They will know what their ancestors did. Morth Prime's crystal body trembled with rage. And if we agree to this, you will restore our ability to reproduce? Sujin smiled, but there was no warmth in it. There is one more condition. Every leader involved in the attack on New Bizin will be handed over to us. Not for trial. The time for trials is past. They will be given to the families of the victims. The families will decide their fate. That is barbaric. Is it? Sujin leaned forward. Was it barbaric when your ships bombed children? When your soldiers laughed at dying women? When you broadcast to the galaxy that humans were worthless? She stood and walked toward the door. You have 1 month to decide. After that, we leave. And you die slowly over generations. watching your civilization crumble because you refused to admit you were wrong. Morith Prime agreed to all terms. The handover of the Morith leaders was broadcast across the galaxy. 43 crystalline beings, including admirals and generals who had ordered the attack, were given to the survivors of Newbie San. Hineul was there. He was 17 now, tall and thin from hard years. His sister Somi stood beside him, holding his hand. The families did not torture the Morith. They did not kill them quickly in anger. They did something the galaxy had never seen. They put the Morith to work. For the rest of their long lives, the Morith leaders were forced to build and maintain the memorials to their victims. Every day, they carved names into crystal. Every night, they slept in simple rooms, surrounded by images of the people they had killed. They lived for centuries, as Morith do, and spent every moment of that time in service to the dead. The galaxy watched and learned. When the nanomachines were finally deactivated, the Morith Collective was a shadow of its former self. Their population had dropped by half. Their empire had crumbled. Other species had taken their territory, their resources, their power. Within 50 years, the Morith ceased to exist as a political entity. The survivors scattered across the galaxy, forever marked by what their ancestors had done. They became a warning, a lesson, a story told to children about what happens when you hurt a human. And in the dark spaces between stars, other empires took note. The Morith had been powerful. The Morith had been ancient. The Morith had laughed at the weak. Organic humans. Now the Morith were gone, and the humans had never fired a single shot. This was why the galaxy feared them. Not because they could destroy in anger, but because they could destroy in patience. They did not fight wars. They ended species. And they did it slowly, carefully, making sure every lesson was learned before the final silence fell. Admiral Sujin returned to Earth a hero, but she refused all honors. When reporters asked her how she felt about destroying an entire civilization, she gave an answer that would be repeated for centuries. "We did not destroy them," she said. "We gave them a choice. Admit what they did and pay the price, or refuse and face the consequences." They could have survived. They chose their pride over their children's future. She paused and looked directly at the camera. Let every species in the galaxy understand this. We do not start fights. We end them. We do not seek revenge. We seek justice. And we are very, very patient. Harm our people, and we will not rest until the scales are balanced. Not in a year. Not in a decade. Not in a century. We will balance them eventually, no matter how long it takes. The message was clear. Humans were not to be touched. Everyone understood. Yuna sat in silence. The ambassador's words echoed in her mind. She had grown up learning about human history, the first colonies, the trade routes, the peaceful expansion into the galaxy. Her schools had taught her that humanity was a small, friendly species just trying to find its place among the stars. No one had told her about the Morith. No one had explained why aliens stepped aside when she walked past. Why don't we know this? She finally asked. Why isn't this taught in our schools? Ambassador Vreel folded his many arms. Your government made a decision long ago. They believed that if humans knew the truth, they might become proud, arrogant. They might start conflicts instead of ending them. So they buried the history and taught only peace. But everyone else knows? Every species in the galaxy teaches this history to their children. It is the most important lesson we have. Never anger a human. Never test their patience. Never assume that because they are small, they are weak. Taiho stood and walked to the window. His reflection showed a troubled face. The Morith were one example. You mentioned others. The Trading Syndicate. The Void Kings. What happened to them? Vreel nodded slowly. The Syndicate's mistake was greed. The Void King's mistake was hatred. But the result was the same. He activated a display screen on the wall. Images appeared. Star maps, alien faces, ruined worlds. The Trading Syndicate was an economic empire. They controlled shipping lanes across half the galaxy. About 150 years ago, they decided they wanted human workers. Not partners, workers. Slaves, Una said quietly. They did not use that word. They called it contracted labor. They raided small human colonies and took people by force. Thousands of humans were brought to Syndicate worlds and made to work in factories, mines, and farms. Ji-hoon's young face was pale. What did humanity do? Nothing. At first, Real changed the image to show a group of humans in chains. The humans who were taken did not fight. They went quietly to their workstations. They followed orders. They caused no trouble. That doesn't sound like the Morth response. It was far worse. Real's voice dropped. The humans did not rebel. They sabotaged, quietly, patiently, one by one. They broke the machines that kept the Syndicate running. He showed images of factories on fire, ships crashing, power stations exploding. Every human worker was an agent of destruction. They learned how systems worked, then made sure those systems failed at the worst possible moments. Ships lost power in deep space. Food storage facilities spoiled entire harvests. Banking computers deleted financial records. Real shook his head with something like admiration. Within 8 years, the Syndicate's economy collapsed. Billions of credits vanished. Trade routes fell apart. Planets starved because supplies never arrived. And through it all, the humans kept working. They smiled at their masters. They said, "Yes, sir," and "Of course, sir." And every night, they broke something else. How did it end? The Syndicate came to Earth on their knees. They begged humanity to take their people back. They paid enormous sums in reparations. They freed every human and apologized publicly to the galaxy. Real paused. The Syndicate still exists today, but they are nothing. A small trading company with no power. Their empire was destroyed not by weapons, but by the quiet hands of people they thought were their slaves. The room was silent. Minji, who rarely spoke, asked a question. And the Void Kings? Real's expression changed. Where he had shown something like respect when speaking of the Syndicate, now he showed only horror. The Void Kings were different. They did not want human labor or human territory. They wanted human death. They believed that only their species deserved to exist. All others were pollution to be cleaned from the universe. He brought up an image of twisted, shadow-like beings with too many limbs and eyes that glowed red. They attacked the human research station near the edge of known space. It was a medical facility. The scientists there were studying a disease that affected only the Void Kings. They had been working for decades to find a cure. A cure? Taiho frowned. They were trying to help the Void Kings? Humanity hoped that if they could cure this disease, the Void Kings might see them differently, might understand that organic life could offer gifts, not just competition. Real's many eyes blinked. The Void Kings destroyed the station, killed everyone. Then they broadcast a message saying they had cleansed the human infection. Una felt sick. What happened to the cure? The humans who escaped the station, only 3 of them, had copies of the research. All 50 years of work. Every test result. Every formula. Real's voice became very quiet. Earth gave them a choice. Share the cure and prove humanity's good intentions. Or destroy it and let the disease do what the Void Kings would not allow medicine to do. They destroyed it. They destroyed it. Real nodded. And then they announced to the galaxy what they had done. They told everyone that the Void Kings had been days away from receiving a cure that would have saved millions of their people. Now that cure was gone forever. Any scientist who tried to recreate it was forbidden from helping the Void Kings in any way. Trademaster Cullux, an old merchant who had been listening from the corner, spoke for the first time. I was young when it happened. I remember watching the broadcasts. The Void Kings screamed for help. They begged every species in the galaxy to find a new cure. They offered everything they had. Did anyone help? Ji-hoon asked. Some tried, but humans had spread across the galaxy by then. They were everywhere, doctors, scientists, traders, and they all remembered what the Void Kings had done. Every time a researcher got close to a cure, something happened. Equipment broke. Data was lost. Scientists changed their minds and worked on other projects. Cullux looked at the humans with ancient eyes. The Void Kings died slowly over 100 years. The disease took them one by one. Toward the end, their leaders came to Earth personally. They knelt before your government and cried. They admitted everything they had done wrong. They begged for mercy. What did humanity say? Nothing. Your leaders listened politely. Then they said the conversation was over and asked the Void Kings to leave. Collux's voice was barely a whisper. The last Void King died 60 years ago. Their worlds are empty now. Their cities are ruins. Their species exists only in history books as a warning to others. Yuna felt Taiho's hand on her shoulder. She looked up at him and saw her own confusion reflected in his face. Are we the villains? She asked. Is that what this means? Ambassador Vreel answered carefully. That depends on how you define the word. Humans never struck first. They never attacked the innocent. They never killed those who had not harmed them. But when they were wronged, they did not stop until justice was complete. Even if it took generations. Even if it meant watching entire species disappear. Scholar Yenny, a Kethany historian who had entered the room during Vreel's story, spoke up. I have studied humanity for 40 years. I believe I understand your species better than most aliens. What have you learned? Yuna asked. Other species fight wars. They win or lose, make peace, and move on. Humans do not fight wars. Yenny paused, choosing her words carefully. Humans fight extinctions. They do not stop when the battle ends. They do not stop when the enemy surrenders. They only stop when the enemy no longer exists as a threat. This is terrifying to us. But I do not believe it makes you evil. Then, what does it make us? Just. Yenny nodded slowly. It makes you the most just species in the galaxy. You never punish more than the crime deserves. But you always punish exactly what the crime deserves. No matter how long it takes. No matter what it costs. A young Tauran officer suddenly burst into the room. His scales were pale with fear, and his breath came in quick gasps. He looked at Yuna and her crew with wide, terrified eyes. Please, he said, his voice shaking. I need to know. The rumors I have heard. Is it true that a Tauran patrol ship fired on a human vessel last week? Yuna looked at Vreel. The ambassador's face was grave. What have you heard? Yuna asked. A captain in our fleet. He saw a human cargo ship in disputed space. He thought it was smugglers. He fired warning shots. One of them hit the ship. The young officer's hands were trembling. Is it true? Did it happen? Because if it did, he could not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Everyone in the room knew what it meant if a Tauran had harmed a human. The galaxy was watching. And somewhere, in the silent depths of space, humanity was deciding how to respond. The diplomatic summit was held in the Grand Hall of Nexus 7. It was the largest meeting space on the station, designed to hold representatives from 100 different species. Today, it held only a handful of people. But the entire galaxy was watching through broadcast systems. High Chancellor Morn of the Tauran Empire stood at the center of the hall. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, with dark green scales and golden eyes that had seen 1,000 battles. He had led his people through wars, famines, and political crises. He was not afraid of anything in the universe, except for what might walk through that door. "They are coming," his aide whispered. Morn straightened his shoulders and waited. Around him, his guards stood in perfect formation. They were the finest soldiers in the Toran military. Each one had killed dozens of enemies in combat. Today, their weapons remained pointed at the ground. Today, they were here only to show respect. The doors opened. Earth Ambassador Sunwoo entered the hall. She was a small woman, barely reaching Morn's chest. Her gray hair was pulled back in a simple style. She wore plain clothes with no symbols of rank or power. She had no guards, no weapons, no display of military strength. She walked alone, and every Tauren in the room felt their blood run cold. Behind her, Yuna and her crew stood with Ambassador Vreel and the others who had witnessed the previous day's conversations. They had been invited to observe, to see how humanity handled conflict in the modern age. Sunwoo stopped in front of Chancellor Morn. She looked up at him with calm, patient eyes. Eyes that held no anger, no hatred, just quiet evaluation. "Chancellor," she said. Her voice was soft, but carried through the silent hall. "Thank you for coming so quickly, Ambassador." Morn bowed deeply, something he had never done for any leader in his long life. "I came the moment I heard. I want you to know that the actions of Captain Hyan were not ordered by me or by any Tauren government. He acted alone. I understand. I have brought him with me." Morn gestured, and 2 guards led a Tauren officer into the hall. The captain was young, his scales pale with terror. "He is yours. Do with him as you see fit. I also offer full reparations for any damage to the human vessel. Name your price. We will pay it." Ambassador Sunwoo nodded slowly. She turned to look at someone in the crowd. "Captain Boyang, would you come forward, please?" A human woman stepped out from the observers. She was middle-aged with strong hands and a weathered face. This was the captain whose ship had been fired upon. She walked to stand beside Ambassador Sunwoo. "Captain," Sunwoo said, "please tell us what happened." Boyang spoke clearly. "I was transporting medical supplies to Colony 14. My ship entered the contested zone because it was the fastest route. A Tauren patrol ship appeared and ordered me to stop. I complied. They scanned my cargo and found no weapons, no illegal goods. Then they demanded I pay a security fee or face consequences." "And you refused?" "I refused. The fee was illegal. I had every right to be in that space." Boyang paused. The captain fired 3 warning shots. One of them hit my engine. I lost power for 6 hours. My crew was frightened. My cargo was delayed. But no one was hurt. Ambassador Sunwoo turned back to Chancellor Morin. "You heard the account. No deaths, no serious injuries. A damaged engine and delayed medical supplies." Morin nodded eagerly. "Yes, Ambassador. A terrible incident, but thankfully a minor one. We are prepared to—" "I am not finished." Sunwoo's soft voice cut through his words like a blade. "Captain Boyang, you were harmed by this Tauren officer. You have the right to demand punishment. What do you want?" The hall fell completely silent. Every alien held their breath. The Marth had refused to apologize, and their species was gone. The Syndicate had tried to enslave humans, and their empire had crumbled. The Void Kings had killed without mercy, and they had died the same way. What would this human woman demand for a damaged engine? Boyang looked at the terrified Tauren captain. She looked at Chancellor Morn. She looked at all the aliens watching, waiting, afraid. Then she spoke. "I want my engine repaired at full cost. I want compensation for my delayed cargo. And I want this captain demoted and reassigned to a desk position where he cannot threaten civilian ships. Morin blinked. That is all? That is all. Boyan turned to face the young Tauran directly. You made a stupid decision. You let your pride and your greed make you do something foolish. But you did not kill anyone. You did not destroy my ship. You made a mistake. She stepped closer to him. The Morath chose to murder 12,000 innocent people and laugh about it. The Syndicate chose to enslave humans for profit. The Void Kings chose genocide. You chose to be greedy and arrogant. Her voice hardened. These are not the same things. I will not destroy your life for one mistake. But you will remember this day. You will remember that a human showed you mercy you did not deserve. And you will spend the rest of your career making sure no other Tauran makes the same mistake. The young captain fell to his knees. Tears ran from his golden eyes. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you. Ambassador Sunwoo stepped forward. Chancellor Morin, Captain Boyan has stated her terms. Do you accept them? Yes. Morin said quickly. Yes, we accept completely. Full repairs. Full compensation. The captain will be demoted immediately. There's one additional condition. Sunwoo's voice remained calm. This incident must be taught in every Tauran military academy. Every officer in your fleet must learn what happened here. They must understand how close they came to disaster because of one foolish captain's greed. Morin nodded without hesitation. It will be done. I swear it. Then we are finished. Sunwoo bowed slightly. The matter is closed. The hall erupted in quiet murmurs. Aliens whispered to each other in amazement. This was not what they had expected. They had expected threats, demands for execution, the beginning of another extinction. Instead, they had witnessed something that confused them completely. Mercy. After the summit, Yuna found Ambassador Sunwoo standing alone near a window, looking out at the stars. May I ask you something? Yuna said, Of course. Why did we show mercy this time? After everything I learned about the Morath, the Syndicate, the Void Kings, why let this captain live? Sunwoo smiled. It was a warm smile, full of something that might have been sadness or wisdom. The Morath chose murder. They planned it. They celebrated it. They showed no regret. The Syndicate chose slavery. They knew what they were doing was wrong, and they did it anyway. The Void Kings chose hatred so deep that they destroyed people who were trying to help them. She turned to face Yuna. This Tauran captain made a mistake. A bad decision driven by greed and pride. But he did not choose evil. He did not plan to kill. When he realized what he had done, he was terrified. He has the capacity to learn, to grow, to become better. So we judge each case individually? We judge each case with perfect clarity. Sunwoo's eyes were steady. This is why we are untouchable. Not because we destroy without thought. Not because we are cruel. But because every species in the galaxy knows exactly what will happen if they wrong us. She gestured toward the window. Toward the countless stars and the countless species that lived among them. If you make a mistake, we will give you the chance to correct it. If you commit a crime, you will pay for that crime and no more. But if you choose evil, if you deliberately harm our people without remorse, then we will not rest until justice is complete. Every empire knows this. Every child in the galaxy learns it. That is why they step aside when we pass. That is why they bow their heads. Yuna nodded slowly. We are not feared for our cruelty. No, Sunwoo's voice carried the weight of centuries. We are feared because we are just. And justice, the galaxy learned long ago, is far more terrifying than cruelty could ever be. Later that day, Yuna's ship departed from Nexus 7. Other vessels moved aside respectfully as the Dawn Runner passed. Aliens in observation windows bowed their heads. Taiho stood beside Yuna on the bridge. "Do you feel different now?" he asked, "knowing what we are?" Yuna watched the stars spread out before them. Somewhere out there were human colonies, human families, human children who did not know the history their ancestors had written. They lived in peace because of what others had done for them. "I feel responsible," she said finally. "Every human carries the weight of this reputation. The galaxy respects us because of what our ancestors did. Now we have to earn that respect through our own wisdom. Is that a burden?" She shook her head slowly. "No, it is a gift. We were given the power to end conflicts without firing weapons. We were given the ability to make empires kneel with nothing but patience and memory. But we were also given the wisdom to know when mercy serves justice better than punishment." The ship jumped to faster than light speed. Stars blurred into lines of light. "Humans are untouchable," Yuna said quietly. "Not because we are feared, not because we are powerful, but because we are just. And that is something worth carrying." Behind them, Nexus 7 shrank to a point of light and disappeared. Ahead, the galaxy waited dot and in every corner of known space. Every species remembered the same lesson: never harm a human, because humans never forget, and their justice, once awakened, is patient, perfect, and eternal.